Welcome to an end episode of A Perfect Blend, where we discuss customer retention and the different approaches to increasing and improving it, particularly with direct to consumer brands, but also sometimes B2B or uh, services. Yeah, products or services. So I'm your host, Dr. Paul McNeil. And basically, we're trying to have a very practical brainstorming discussion with experts in the field about things that they're doing. Today, we have the amazing, the great, the talented Daniel Romero. Uh, he is the VP of Growth and Marketing at Love and Science. He is a Google Ads certified, battle tested, creative digital business strategist with a passion for increasing ROI and visibility for businesses small and large. Through his work at Love and Science, he's had the opportunity to work with companies in a wide range of industries and service types: e commerce, healthcare and hospital systems, SaaS, HR, automotive, and higher education, to name a few. So I asked him what was his guilty pleasure TV show, and he said Cops or The Office. So I feel like we're going to have a good time because I love The Office and I love the Cops theme song. I haven't watched the show in a while, but I do love it. So just a quick summary of like what inspired this podcast is just the thought that customer retention can be really optimized for people in businesses large and small. When you think about three main areas, and that's customer experience, usable security, or user friendly cybersecurity, and voice technology. Some people think about it more as conversational AI, and all of it kind of works together with data driven experimentation. And so that is the what I call the Cuve approach. And Cuve, if you know anything about wine, that's the vat that they hold the wine in when they're making a perfect blend. And the goal is to find the perfect blend for your brand when it comes to customer retention. So, Daniel, before we get started, um, just share a little bit about your approach to customer retention when you are working with a client.
Sure. So it unfortunately kind of plays second fiddle for a lot of my clients.
Okay.
What ends up happening almost all of the time is the push for growth and new users, new purchasers, things like that. It's just the priority almost always. Even if you've talked ahead of time with the client, explain like, hey, we
Yeah.
really need to dedicate budget for brand awareness, for customer retention, all that stuff. Inevitably, it comes back to, well, we really want more new leads without changing our budget. So can you shift some budget over and all of that?
Yeah.
So that's a difficult battle. I mean, it's something that we definitely talk about with our clients. Is this is highly valuable to go after the clients you already have and find ways to upsell them and continue, selling to them as they go. Um, and everyone kind of knows, uh, the whole belief that the cost to retain someone is so much lower than the cost to acquire. Um,
Yep.
but those principles just fly out the window when at the end of the day you've got a set
Yep.
marketing budget with some growth goals. So that's the unfortunate reality of a lot of the client relationships that we have.
For sure. Um, can you think of one or two brands that were kind of slightly more gung ho, not only in your discussions, but when it came time to actually work with them, where they're like, yeah, let's actually follow through on this customer retention? Can you think of like one or two?
Yeah, so we're working with a client right now, and they're kind of forced to take a slow approach and look at customer retention right now because they're in the middle of they're about to launch a new brand. They've never done
Okay.
any sort of marketing really at all. It's just been organic growth. They give financial advice. They have a wildly popular YouTube channel, podcasts, and all of that stuff. It's
Right.
been going on for like 15, 16 years of just this organic growth as being experts in the field. So when they contract with us, there's been this thing of like they've never monetized anything. It's just been free resources for a
Wow.
decade and a half. Um,
Okay.
so there's been this thing of like, well, how do we monetize? And also we don't really want to reach out to new users yet because we're about to flip the switch and change all of our branding, and that's going to be confusing to get somebody
Mhm.
right now with the old branding and then 2 weeks later it's something completely different.
Right.
um, so they are a really an awesome client because of the fact we've been so laser focused on just looking at existing users, just the diehard rabid fans, and figuring out how to keep them engaged.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I found it really interesting. I was doing some reading and some prep for this as well. So I saw that I want to say it was the Harvard Business Reviews. They did a study and they said that like if you can increase, if some brands can increase their customer retention by like 5%, they can increase their annual profits like 75%, like on the extreme ends. I mean, I'm sure, but I mean, even if you don't hit 75 and you fall short at 25% increase, like it's really interesting. And then there was, I think it might have been Adobe, don't quote me, did a study. I think it came out top of this year, and they were talking about how brands that were smaller and medium size, that by focusing on customer retention, that was how they're able to kind of ride out the pandemic because they were just really, like you said, kind of honed in on that core base, and it ended up doing a lot more for them than trying to spend money they didn't have or might not be able to get back competing with these larger brands that could have just been like, that's cool, we can just keep on throwing money at Google ads and so forth and so on. So
Yeah,
yeah, no, I think it's great that one, that they've been able to exist providing that value for what, 10, 15 years, and then also that they are thinking about it in that way of let's be very intentional about how we do our rebranding, and in that process let's bring our longtime fans along with us. So I think that's
yeah.
really cool.
Yeah, well, to
um
that point also
mhm,
about weathering the storm of the pandemic and all of that stuff, we had another client. They came to us right as the pandemic hit and shut everything down, and they were like it was a skincare company, like a high end skincare thing that 100% of their business to that point,
yeah,
or very close to 100%, was through like dermatologist referrals. So like
okay,
no kind of outsourced marketing of any kind or anything like that. But then suddenly, all of these clinics closed their doors. You couldn't go
hmm,
in and get any sort of an in-person referral. And so that was another example of like, we just had to get in and figure, okay, how do we reach those users now who cannot go and get it? You've never had like an e-commerce platform before, and
hmm,
kind of built that up, and it essentially saved the business because the brick and mortar sales had dropped. It
hmm,
was it wasn't like a full went to to zero or anything, but it was like a massive 75% drop or something like that in revenue over the next
wow,
year. But
that's rough.
the e-commerce revenue, after going after almost exclusively existing users, so again customer retention, I think we'd had it's like a 95% increase year over year or something like that,
Wow,
in the time
that's
that we launched.
brilliant.
So
It's amazing. And what was your
there's
main
definitely value
channel?
there for sure.
For sure.
Google
What
ads.
Google Ads was your main kind of value, was kind of retargeting those existing customers with Google Ads.
Yeah.
Okay. And are you more of a fan of search ads? Are you more a fan of the display or video? What's your initial weapon of choice? Like if you had to pick, like what are you going to initially?
It's so hard. So it just depends a lot on the business itself.
Okay.
Search ads, the thing's so great there is it is so transactional. Someone is
Hmm.
actively looking for a solution, and you have the opportunity to say, "Hey, I'm your solution right here."
Right.
Everything else is a little bit more. I mean, there's more signals. Signals have been added over the years in terms of like reaching out to in-market audiences, things like that. Um,
Hmm.
but it's just everything else is a little bit more passive.
Hmm.
Maybe you are hitting the exact right person with a display ad, but they're not in that mindset because they're trying to check the weather or something like that. It's
Right.
like it changes the dynamic quite a bit. But on the other hand, we've gotten plenty of clients that people don't know to look for something.
Hmm.
And that's where display and video in particular come in really handy. And I've display is like, we use it for sure. Um, I would
Yeah.
always prefer, if we're not doing search, that someone has really awesome video, because It just, if a picture can tell 1,000 words, how much more can a video in 30
Right.
seconds tell? So that's my preference, but obviously it's a lot harder to get high quality video out of a client, with, especially if they're strapped for production budget or something along those
For
lines. But
sure.
I would say in terms of preference, search, video, display.
Okay. Search video display. That's cool. That's interesting. So when I've done with the clients that I've worked with, I usually will do. I've done a little bit of search, but I've generally am going in with video. I do a lot of. We've done a lot of like whiteboard animation type like video ads for them, stuff like that. So we'll do a lot with video. And generally for me, display only happens because now. Google video ads forces you to do like the responsive, so then it's like
Yeah.
whatever they generated as a display has happened. But no, it's really interesting to hear that, and I think you're very right. Like if you can catch people while they're in that mind frame because they just type that in. I mean, and it also makes reflects in the pricing, right? When it comes to cost per click and your cost to acquire with that, because you have these people that are right there, and Google understands that, and other companies understand that, so you have those higher bids.
Yeah,
Very
absolutely.
cool. Okay. Well, this is going to be the part where we kind of dive in a little bit, and we think practically about like one of your pseudo clients that's going to remain nameless, right? Or one of your clients. Um, so I guess I have a couple of questions, kind of, so that you can in your mind kind of select one, and then we'll just change the name, change specifics, but we'll
Sure.
work through it, right?
That
So
works.
the first thing being, um, let's see. So you mentioned, so let's pick someone who like is kind of interested in focusing on that customer retention, and maybe it's their second priority, but it's still pretty high up there for them. So let's go with someone who's one of your clients that's actually interested in customer retention, and um, maybe they have some kind of, I don't know. I need to think of like a KPI. Like, what do they want as far as like in an uplift in like whether it's engagement or straight up repeat sales? What do you think we should go with? Um,
I mean, one thing I'm thinking of right off the bat is automotive.
okay,
The problem is, it's a pretty lengthy cycle in terms of the repeat purchase. But I know that
sure,
it's a big concern for dealers that I've worked with in dealer groups, is this idea of, can we get them into a new car at our dealership when it's time to upgrade? We don't want them going elsewhere. So, um,
ah, that sounds
that's
hard. I like that. Let's do that. Let's do automotive.
difficult.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah, let's fail forward on this one. So let's do that. So an automotive dealer. Okay, I like that. Let's see. So they would, I guess they want to have them ready for their end goal is to, of course, have them do that sale. So then maybe they want to make sure that, how long is their sales cycle on average? Do you know?
It really depends on the brand. If it's a
Okay,
luxury brand, it tends to be a lot shorter. If it's,
sure.
someone's looking for a Toyota Tercel, I don't think they make a Tercel anymore, but
Yeah,
whatever the cheap one is,
yeah, for
then it's
sure.
going to be, usually it's a longer turnover time.
Okay,
Um, but I would say let's just average it out like 2, 3 years, something like
okay,
that.
I like that. So let's say 3 years. So in those 3 years, let's think about like how often they want that engagement to occur, just so that they know that their cut buyer knows that they're still alive. Like they're still here and kicking. So what would be a good KPI for that?
Boy, um, I don't know if I wouldn't necessarily call it a KPI, I guess, but
Right.
really kind of the only touch point they've got in between the sale and when somebody's ready
Sure.
to return is service.
It's service.
So like
Okay.
oil changes, stuff like that.
Okay.
Which, it's kind of an uphill battle for a lot of dealerships to sell that, because usually it costs a lot more money to go get those small
For
service
sure.
maintenance items done at a dealership and whatnot. But that's really kind of that's the foot in the door for them. If they can get somebody in for those, one, they make money off of it, and
Mm-hmm.
two, they're like building that rapport, can talk to them and say, hey, maybe you should upgrade now, all of that. So
Yeah.
I would say if you could get if you could increase their rate of return on service appointments from a new sale,
Gotcha.
that would probably be the most compelling and exciting thing for the dealers.
Okay, so service. So one thing that I was thinking of, and you could correct me if I'm wrong on this, would also be like maybe some of those parts and stuff, because I know some people
Yeah.
might not want to come in for the full service, but they might say like, hey, you know what? I know for a fact that I can go to this dealer and get these particular parts.
Yeah,
Um,
and I've definitely seen that with the chip shortages and whatnot going on right now. That's been a big push for a lot of dealers. If they haven't already had that, they're trying to add it in as like, an e-commerce component on their website to just order the parts right through them. Because,
yeah.
like right now, I ordered my wife a new Bronco, Ford Bronco, October of last year, and it
Hmm.
still isn't here yet. And they've told me as of yesterday, like, hey, update your order because we're going to push you into 2023 now. So it's
Oh
like
my goodness.
there's a lot of people that maybe would want to upgrade their car that
Yeah,
can't, and then it's becomes that much bigger of an issue to make sure you're getting your service, your parts, and all of that done.
for sure. Yeah, and I know for me last year, I had an issue with my old like A to B, and I wanted to get a part, and I think they had me calling like dealerships in about 4 or 5 different states. Like I was just like, nope, too far. I was like, is it more than a 5 hour drive? Actually, you know what? It's okay. I'll just go without. Like I'm not gonna do this. And so yeah, I've experienced. Okay, so this makes sense. So we're thinking about it. Okay. And then let's give them some kind of ballpark budget, and I guess based on who you've worked with, when you think about like what their general budgets are automotively, like for that type of industry, maybe we want to say they put like 10 or 15%, 20% of that towards customer retention. Would that be a fair estimate for the client you have in mind?
Yeah, I would say probably on average 10%
Ten
goes
percent.
to those kinds of service type
Okay.
campaigns.
Okay, so about 10%. All right, so let's go with that. So, what would be a good number figure for a client as far as like what that 10% is?
Boy, it just varies so much. If you're looking at like a major like automotive group versus a standalone dealership,
Yeah,
it could be anywhere from 2,000 to maybe maybe 10, something like
2 to
that. Yeah.
10. All right, so let's split the difference. Let's do like 5,500, like 6K, some of that. Okay, cool. I like this. So now we have like our budget. Let's experiment a little bit. So I have these questions around those various uh points that I was talking about, like customer experience, things like that. And I think that we talked a little bit about having those different touch points. And it sounds like one of the key touch points you mentioned would be like around service. Um, and I know we're today I actually kind of wanted to talk about like maybe how would voice be able to be integrated in their customer retention marketing. And I know a lot of people love to use voice when it comes to like um what do you call it, like the IVR, the automated call stuff. So I want to be a little more creative than that and just try to be like even more difficult and see if we can't think of something else that might be able to get people to engage with this brand around service, um, that isn't necessarily just filtering their calls, or like a chatbot kind of scenario. And I'm not fully sure exactly what that is, but I feel like that's kind of what we can try to figure out. And that's kind of the challenge I think would be fun. I don't know.
Yeah. Boy,
Yeah.
that is a tricky one. Because the first thing I think about is if you're in your car,
Yeah.
how obviously you don't always see people following this, but you're not supposed to be holding your phone in your
True.
car.
That's
So
fair.
that's like I don't ever use like voice command or anything on anything except when I'm driving.
Okay.
So if there's a way to integrate into getting into that schedule on a car, on a vehicle, where
Okay.
someone's using the device in that way and maybe get a
Yeah.
reminder. Not sure how that would work. If it could be like a placement directly in Spotify or something like that, the kinds of apps that people are using
Yep.
uh, during their commute. But
Yep. No, I think that's something. So if we're in the car, let's see what's coming. I think I wrote a couple of brainstorming things. So we're thinking about The product. So this in this way, we would be thinking about like re-engagement. Um, okay, so you talked about being in the car. There are some voice assistants that are in the car. I work primary or mostly with Alexa stuff, so I do know that Alexa has like I think it's called Echo Gear, where you can kind of set it in on your dash so that you can still have you can talk to Alexa. They also, I know that the Alexa app on your phone will also um, like you can use that and make it your default, whether you have an iPhone or an Android. You can make Alexa. So in my in that example, I think I would be like, okay, do they have some kind of do they give out like is this a large enough brand where they're like, hey, if you spend this much with us here, you get this little Echo Gear. So now we're in your car. Maybe it's a branded thing, and now we can push it out that way. Um, and even then how are we making sure that they are constantly in front of us?
Yeah.
So I know that I've seen some like I've done some stuff with coaches, or I've done some pitches and stuff with coaches who wanted to have like a voice activated search of their catalog of various materials and stuff like that. So I'm wondering, have you seen any of these dealerships who do go ahead and create like some kind of self-help content on YouTube or anything like that as their way of engaging at all? I know some of the smaller
Mm.
dealerships do, but I don't know. I haven't
Yeah, I
worked with
don't,
the larger
for any that
ones.
I've worked with, no. I've seen more of that stuff like on the OEM level, like,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I can't think of any direct clients that I have that have done that.
Okay. What are they normally doing as far as like the direct clients you've worked with when it comes to, or is it mostly mailers, um,
Email, mailers, or,
email and mailers?
a lot of times we'll set up like the service campaigns as more of a remarketing, retargeting initiative. So it's,
Okay.
you know,
Okay.
and then
All
obviously,
right.
it's a little bit harder to do this with Google than it is with Facebook, but if
Yeah.
they give us a list of emails or whatever, it's pretty easy to then specifically target. These are people that are coming up. Maybe their lease is expiring or something like
Oh,
that,
yeah.
or they could be connected to a service schedule or something along those lines.
Yeah. Okay. I'm thinking, I'm just trying to think of like what I've seen because I know I've seen those engagements. I have seen, okay, this is kind of going back. I don't know if I mentioned this to you in one of our previous conversations, but you know how they used to have product placement back in the day and like those radio spots, and it'd just be
Hmm.
like, whatever Ford, that kind of deal. Um, so there are those interactive stories I know in like the Alexa space, and most of the time they're for kids, but they have some for adults, so they're kind of like choose your own adventure, but they're like audio, like audible interactive audiobooks kind of deal. And I'm wondering if that might be something that someone would consider as well, like, hey, this is like our sponsored thing, so like as you're driving, or maybe they do something where they work with local artists. I'm trying to think of activities people do when they're driving. It's like you said, like listening in the car, stuff like that. um so maybe some kind of branded something, music related. Maybe they curate like local artists, and so now you're listening to that, so you can tap in with their skill that way, and that way you're still in there. And every so often they can pop in these like voice ads, because it's their thing. Um,
Well, to go back to you had mentioned the catalogs.
yeah.
I could see that being potentially valuable still, even just with, one of the channels that I didn't mention when you were asking how they normally do it, mailers, email, is texting. There's a lot of texting that happens from dealerships at
Ah,
this point. So even
okay.
if it was just something of like, the automated message that gets texted out is to ask Alexa about, the service prices or something. I don't know
Sure.
how, you'll know better than I
Yeah.
do on this. I don't know how like advanced you can get in terms of could you actually potentially schedule an appointment
Yeah.
through the Alexa.
Yeah.
So that
They
could
could.
be. hugely valuable too. Because one thing that I do not ever want to do is get on the phone with a dealership, like no matter what. Like I just
Right.
I have no desire to do that.
No,
So
no,
if I can't do
same.
it on the computer or like through text, I'm not doing it.
No, so here's the thing. You could do um notifications and reminders. Like you can set those up if you on them so that they kind of push something to you and you can say like, hey Alexa, like what are my updates or what have you. But then yeah, you could basically say like, hey, I need a name for this thing. Kellogg's, the cereal. I just had some cereal earlier, so let's go with that. Kellogg's dealership, right? You could be like, hey, Alexa, ask Kellogg's uh, Nashville to renew this appointment or to set me in for this date and stuff like that. And they could actually have it where it's trained to kind of catch that information, set up those appointments. Um, you could have it where, it says like, hey, you've got this message from Kellogg's to remind you that you're at this many, however many miles out, that kind of deal. Um, I'm wondering if like a car tip of the day kind of thing might be another helpful helpful blast out for those that are actually using Alexa pretty regularly. If that would be helpful.
I could see for sure, like maybe some seasonal tips.
Yeah,
You know,
something seasonal.
yeah, like weather related. I
Yeah.
guess that's not as big of a deal down here, but like, I grew
Well,
up in
yeah,
New
for sure.
York. It's
But
a
no,
big deal.
but that's the thing. I think it would just depend on like your location
Right.
because, for instance, I was out in Vegas this summer, and they have like it gets so hot out there in like Arizona and Nevada, like or is it Nevada? I think they told me it's supposed to be pronounced. My bad, Joe. But they basically were saying that like sometimes the rubber on your tire, if you leave it outside, can like stick to the pavement, and you just have to go get new tires. And I was just like, I can't imagine that, right?
Yeah.
Like I lived in New York, Michigan, and then like down here, like I can't imagine it being so hot that like I just have to buy new tires now because it's stuck. So like maybe there are
Yeah.
some I'm making it like some best practices there, or conversely, like you're in New York and you've never lived in the snow before because you're coming from down south. That's hey, here are things you need to do. Like you might need to get snow
Yeah.
tires on and
Even
that
just a
kind of stuff.
reminder of when to get your snow tires put on or when to
Exactly.
have them taken off, things like that.
Yeah. So.
I guess, there's also like the topical stuff, like with gas prices when they went flying up over the summer, anything you
Mhm.
could give as far as, tips on increasing your mileage or something along
Sure.
those lines. Yeah.
Yeah. So that makes me think of they call them there's like this thing called an Alexa flash briefing. So these are like mini podcasts. Usually they're less they want them less than 10 minutes. They average usually between like 2 to 3 minutes, most people who do them. But they're like these little nuggets and you can do them daily or weekly. And so when people say like ask Alexa what's the news, they basically subscribe to it like a news channel, and then a brand can just kind of push those things out. So that's something that I
Mm.
think might be a good first step for a brand like that, especially if we're looking at like a um 5 to 6K budget for this. That's something that wouldn't cost a lot. And um, if they already have some kind of catalog that they're creating around this stuff, cool. And if they don't, oh sorry, and if they don't, they could have like one or two service members each day just kind of like audio record, even if it's on their phone, something it would be decent quality. And now you just stack up these various tips, and now this is something that they can put out in like an evergreen fashion, just kind of set it up on any kind of podcasting, RSS feed type of thing. That might be one that would be interesting. The next level up, I think that would be interesting too, would be, like you said, more interactive maybe skill that not only gives you those tips that you can request those, but you could also get in there and set up these appointments.
Yeah, I
Um,
think what's interesting about what you're describing there with the news kind of
yeah.
features, I feel like that would give you an opportunity to be a lot less personalized. So,
Hmm.
like dealerships, they always have, whatever monthly special or whatever.
Yep.
It could just be something like that that's pushed out once a month and is incorporated into the news or something. And I think that it's a lot
Yeah.
easier to not, segment your audience and all of that stuff with something like
Yep.
that.
Yeah. Um, I like that. And I do like the interactive one as well because I feel like you can still push out that news thing, but then
Mhm.
when I'm ready to ask for something specifically on top of just trying to scheduling, maybe I want to know something, or maybe it's just incorporating like a pricing functionality, so I can be like, hey Alexa, ask Kellogg's Nashville, how much would it cost for this new water pump or something like that. Two things happen there. One, you like you said, like you're capturing that intent. So like a flag can go off. Someone asked for the price of something, but then this person gets that like immediately. So now maybe because I have that triggered, they can go on an email list that's like, oh, we actually are doing, I don't know, a discount on water pumps or something like that, and kind of create their own internal intent based system specifically around their their most active customers. And
Yeah.
that wouldn't be I don't think that would be too costly. I think that would fit inside of that budget as well.
So how does that work generally for you? Like, is that
Yeah.
for the pricing? Is it just like is there ongoing, or is it like more front end heavy of trying to teach the the learnings to Alexa? Like, how's that work generally for you?
So as far as like pricing wise, a lot of it comes from basically kind of doing strategy stuff like this and figure out what like really works, what works with that budget, and then having something usually that's like upfront so that we can actually take the time out to develop it and make it work for them. And then there's usually like a maintenance fee, and then we do like some kind of a service for, I don't know, whatever, 2 3 years, whatever the case is, so that we're constantly, updating and so forth. um, and sometimes we're generating the data, the stuff themselves. Sometimes they're doing it. It just depends on how much they're involved. Generally, if I'm talking to someone, I'm trying to use whatever they already have. So if you've got a YouTube, perfect. If you have, you have a podcast, even better.
Yeah.
And trying to keep that content part down and just creating like another interface for people to kind of get involved with. That's usually what we try to play around with and making sure that that aligns with whatever's going on.
Cool.
Sometimes though, it just doesn't fit, and then I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
I know you want to do some stuff with voice, but I mean, I'll take your money, but I think it's about that effectiveness, and so if you find people who are generally using Alexa pretty regularly, then that can be an investment if you hit that age demographic, usually below 35 40 specifically. Like they're pretty 25 to 35 to 45, they're pretty open to it. The other thing that we've recently been paying attention to as well is like smart TVs, so your Fire Sticks, Fire TV, stuff like that. Those are all still running Alexa, and people are a lot less um, resistant to those things. So they'll be like, "Oh, I never want an Alexa device in my house or in my bedroom." And then I'm like, "Do you have a Fire TV?" Yeah. Do you talk to your television when you make it? Like it's in there, but um I was doing some research and people are starting to look at like how we can use those connected things. And the cool thing about a lot of the Alexa stuff is if it works on the speaker, it works on the TV also. So you can still integrate and have some of that like in living room things, stuff like that. And if you have a screen, you can have video play instead of it be 100% audio. You can pull up images and stuff like that on those screens that people may be able to touch if it's one of those speakers was a touch screen. But even if it's not, like you can still display information and stuff. So now you can start to see, pull up, I don't know, billing or whatever the case may be. And so that's something that um, I don't know that that would work amazingly for the car industry because for automotive company, just because it's very car based, but it is
Yeah.
something that could be tested out for probably a different brand. I think for a
So
car.
I know this
Mhm.
is shifting gears, no pun
No worries.
intended, a little bit,
Yeah,
leaving the car realm for a second. But I was thinking about the guys I was telling you about, the financial guys with the podcast.
sure.
Um, so how would they be able to, for say, um, create an alert system with Alexa to let people know, hey, we're live right now? And
Yep.
then that actually opens up, I'm thinking specifically for the Fire TV because their audience is so YouTube specific. Just
Yeah.
open up right away to their YouTube channel with the live feed.
hmm So
That
they,
that's
oh, so then
interesting.
like, and then have it, so they basically send this alert and then you can say like, open this up and then it will like pull up the YouTube feed for them. Um, I don't know. I haven't done connections. What I have done though is they could send the alert out and then when you respond, it could just show the video from their own like kind of a server thing. So I did work with a client and she did like um home gardening type stuff. And so what she would do is you could go in there and basically the video she was putting on her YouTube, she was putting the audio and video in a skill and you could actually request various things. So you might say like, hey, does she have a special project or something like that? And it would automatically detect if you were talking to Alexa on a screen device or on a speaker. And if you're on a screen device that could play video, then her video would come up and she had like a custom like frame around it and everything like that, and it kind of would let you walk through it. Um,
That's
from the
really cool.
podcasting side, I did a pitch with this company, or this podcast. They're decently sized, um, and we were talking about allowing them to be able to pull out clips and make some of their clips very searchable. So similar to how YouTube will do the just jump in at that point with the chapters, but do that with voice. And so then you could just, filter, kind of segment it out and then just like hear all the clips um, about gas prices or something, like if it's a financial thing, like, hey, we just what are all the like the last 10 clips about gas price? And then you could kind of have those. Do you want to hear another? Yeah. And then kind of hit it that way. And then the other thing that they were excited about was allowing people to be able to um, easily access their show notes. So trigger using that, listening to it or something, and then saying like, "Hey, could you send me the show notes or the links for episode 15 or whatever the case may be?" And then have that voice app just text everything right there to them in a text, send that out. So that would be, I think, from the podcast space, how that could play out. Yeah.
That is very interesting. I feel like
hmm
there's so many opportunities. Um,
For sure.
yeah, that's cool.
So I've been. We are gonna wrap up in a few. I know we only have a few minutes here, so I wanted to make sure. Well, one, it sounds like as far as our test case for our automotive for 10 clients, Kellogg's, um, it sounds like maybe having something where they can set an appointment would be a really good first step for them, right? And then maybe
Yeah.
also having that mini podcast kind of shooting out. And that could be something that they distribute on Alexa or anywhere, right? It could just be, hey, subscribe to our daily mini pod, and they could just put out various tips and stuff like that. That's pretty low budget. And then they could do the voice app part first, where you get access to those tips. Maybe that's searchable, and then they could do um, setting appointments and getting those reminders. I think that would be kind of a cool um, thing. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah, I
cool.
think that pretty much covers the bases on those guys. I think
Yeah,
all of those things would be, first off, exciting to the dealerships to even hear about. And then
yeah,
I don't see how it would not be more beneficial than getting a postcard in the mail
for
at this
sure,
point. So,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think and not even to knock postcards, because I think some people just like getting mail. Like there's a small number, especially when we have like this new like 90s aughts early 2000s nostalgia thing that seems to be happening right now. Um,
yeah, I think one of the hardest things for me about being a marketer is looking past my own preferences,
for
because
sure.
I think because I'm inside here and, and I see how the sausage is made. It's part of the
Yeah.
reason why I was saying earlier, like I don't use any voice services at all,
Yeah.
things like that. Like
Yeah.
I've rejected all of it. But in my mind, I see something like postcards. I think no one's gonna look at that,
Yeah.
but how many people are? I mean, in my neighborhood alone, we've got like half my neighborhood is single family homes, and in the middle of the neighborhood is a bunch of cottages that are 55 and up. And I can almost guarantee you the postcard is going to work for them, even
Right.
if it's not working for me.
Right. And I think that's just part of the thing too, is like understanding what your target, audience is. Like I'm working with the YouTube channel right now, and we started playing around with shorts for them as opposed to just a regular long form content. And when you go and look, I mean, still doing some tweaks, but they're already 18 to was it like 34, like ton of views, just up, up, up compared to what they were getting on their other stuff. So I mean, that's part of the job. But yeah, no, I'm excited. I might even need to see if I can do like a prototype so that when people listen to this episode, they can like jump on and play around with the Kellogg's auto auto skill. We'll see how that works. Um, is there anything that you're working on, and maybe it's not necessarily at Love and Science, that you want to kind of plug, or like you're really passionate about right now?
Boy, that's I feel like if I say no, I look really bad,
No,
saying
no, no,
I
no.
have
It's
no
cool.
passions at the
It's cool.
moment.
It's cool.
No, so I mean, on the topic of audio. So I think I talked to you about this a few months back, but we started exploring doing audio logos, sound
Yeah.
marks, things like
Hmm.
that, which is it's really interesting.
Yeah.
You know, a couple of us, I guess all of us, pretty much everybody on the team has a background in music of some sort, but
Hmm.
we've just squished it down because you can't make any money on music if you're not super awesome. So
Right.
this has been an opportunity to like
Yeah.
incorporate uh, our passion for music into businesses, which has been really cool.
Sure.
So we've been really putting a lot of focus in on that. Right now, I don't know if you're aware of it, but Wikimedia, I guess, has just put out a
Yeah, I was
call.
right about to ask you if you had heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely heard about that, which is exciting. So it feels kind of like the golden ticket rush in Willy Wonka. It's like,
Yeah.
we're scrambling now, trying to figure, okay, what do we do? How many can we submit? All of this stuff. It's just, it's
Yeah.
exciting to have like a more creative, not to say that, add creative and things. There's obviously a lot of creative that goes into that, but to have this just, you can make whatever you want realm is a lot
Yeah.
more fun. Because I can't draw anything. I'm not a designer. I can't make like a logo that's going to
Right.
compel anybody, but I can possibly make a sound, a
A
song.
sound.
So that's
Yeah.
exciting.
I love that. Yeah. I love that. I love that. That's really cool. And I definitely want to know what you guys end up submitting, because I know it's going to be pretty awesome.
I
Um,
think no matter what we do, it's probably going to end up on the blog, a listing of all of them and with the
of
reasoning
all of the ones.
behind. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That'll be cool. Definitely
but
check
it's
out.
another thing I've thought about here too, because as we're looking at this and trying to figure out what are the use cases for these things,
Yep.
something like this Alexa learning, it makes a lot of sense because we've been trying to
Hmm.
figure out, if you have a different sound for a different version. Like one of the clients we're working on, I created a sound system for their reading, for their video,
Hmm.
for downloads. This, whatever the function is, there's a different sound system that goes with that.
Yeah.
So I think it's cool to have that's like landscape you can look at of what's it going to sound like on Alexa. What are the cues that you're going to let people know who this is. So
Yeah. No, I love that, because and that's something I think I was tweeting about yesterday with someone when I found out about the Wikimedia thing, and I was like, I think this is really cool that Wikimedia is trying to make sure that, Alexa isn't just saying, hey, according to Wikipedia, there's a set sound. And I started thinking, like, how far does it really go down? Like, do authors and bloggers start having their own custom sounds? So like, if you let me guess right on your blog when it's in audio form, do I now have my own special like Paul branding sound so that people know, no matter whether I did it for your blog or I did it for NPR or whatever, like, hey, this is a Paul like piece or whatever the case is. Because I think we kind of had that, but it was more name recognition when we were doing like newspapers back in the day. And I think that with that audio piece, and video, we're starting to, we have to come up with those other cues, because people don't wait. Like, thumbnails are insanely important now, as opposed to the description. Like, people aren't going to read. If I don't like your thumbnail, I'm not clicking to even read whatever you wrote. It don't matter if you like what you're telling me in the description, um, the title and the thumbnail. So I think that that's where there's like a big opportunity in sonic branding. And, you know, that's why I'm excited about voice stuff, is because of, like you said, that ability to be really, really creative. And I come from like really loving like the UX background. And so it makes a lot of sense to me. And I like being able to capture all the data that comes with it. So,
That
yeah.
makes sense.
Well, I want to thank you again. I know our time is up. I appreciate you for taking the time out. So some of the questions that I asked are in this worksheet that I have. So if y'all are listening and you would like that, I should be making it available. I want to say in the show notes, but I don't know how this is going to work yet. So you can always just DM me on Twitter at usable sec guy. That's SECGUY, usable sec guy, and you can request it and I'll shoot it out to you. And if you want to know more about the types of things that we're doing, feel free to ask for more, as well as make sure you follow the Love and Science blog. They're doing a lot of cool stuff over there. You see, they're about to submit 1,000 audio branded recordings. Don't quote me. To the Wikimedia competition. So, you know, if you want that kind of scale of production, hit up Daniel on, I think you said LinkedIn is your best way for people to reach you.
Yeah, I would say so. That's I'm like I said, I'm kind of a Luddite, so I shy away from
Mhm.
most social media.
Cool. So LinkedIn, and hopefully we can talk to you guys again next time. Hope you all enjoyed this. Thanks again, Daniel. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul. Bye.
Bye.